The buzzing from my phone wasn't a call. It was a link, sent from a neighbor who usually just shared memes about bad drivers. This time, the message just said, "You need to see this. Now." I clicked, and my own front yard stared back at me. It was a Facebook live stream. A woman in her late 40s, bleached blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, was pointing a perfectly manicured finger at my house. This was Karen, the self-appointed guardian of our neighborhood's moral and ecological purity. Next to her, a young girl, maybe 19, held the phone, her hand visibly shaking. She looked like a hostage reading a script. "As you can see," Karen said, her voice dripping with fake concern, "some residents are still using these harmful sugar water feeders. Our research, conducted by the Harmony with Nature initiative, shows this disrupts the natural migratory patterns of hummingbirds. My hummingbird feeder, a simple glass bottle with red plastic flowers that my late wife bought me years ago. It was the one thing that brought a little life to the quiet of my yard." Then Karen nodded to the girl. The camera shook, and a man I didn't recognize stepped into the frame. He reached over my low fence, unhooked the feeder, and with a sharp, metallic screech, tore the metal hook right off the post. The glass shattered on the walkway. The girl flinched. Karen didn't. Have you ever had that feeling, when someone violates your space, your peace, without even setting foot on your property? It's a cold fire that starts in your gut. This wasn't about a bird feeder. This was a performance, and I was the unwilling star. If you're watching Karenology, you probably know that feeling. It's never just a misunderstanding. I make my living online. I'm what they call an OSINT analyst. It's a fancy term for a simple job. I find patterns in the noise. I connect dots that people try to hide in plain sight. My fingers instinctively found the cool, smooth plastic of an old ID card on my desk. The one from the corporate security job I was fired from, years ago, for telling the truth when they wanted a convenient lie. Some lessons you don't forget. I didn't storm outside. I didn't yell. That's what she wanted. Instead, I saved a copy of the video. The stream ended with Karen smiling into the camera. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who just checked a box on a list. "We're just ensuring community harmony," she said, before the screen went black. I ignored her little initiative. I cleaned up the glass and threw the broken feeder away. For 2 days, there was silence. I thought maybe, just maybe, her little power trip was over. I should have known better. If you know what I'm talking about, maybe hit that like button. It helps to know you're not alone. On the third morning, a county sheriff's car pulled up to my curb. Not just any officer. The chief of police himself, a man named Miller, got out. He was a big guy, maybe my age, with a face that looked permanently tired. He wasn't here for a friendly chat. He stood on my porch holding a piece of paper. "Mike," he said, his voice flat, "I've got a formal complaint against you." He handed me the paper. It was an official warning, citing a city ordinance I'd never heard of. Section 9, Paragraph 4. Prohibition of artificial feeding of wild animals. "It's a hummingbird feeder, Chief," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Or it was. "I know," he sighed. "Look, I don't write the rules. I just enforce them. We got a complaint with video evidence from a registered community group. That means I have to act. It's just protocol." There was that word, protocol. The same shield every bureaucrat hides behind when they don't want to make a real decision. He wasn't a monster. He was just a cog in a machine she was turning. "So this Harmony with Nature initiative is a registered group?" I asked. He nodded. "Filed all the paperwork last month. They're official. Just take the warning, Mike. Don't put up another feeder. Let it go." He left. I stood there on my own porch, holding a piece of paper that turned me into a criminal for wanting to see a few birds. The system wasn't broken. It was being used exactly as designed, by someone who knew which levers to pull. I watched his car disappear down the street, the smell of exhaust fumes hanging in the quiet morning air. I walked back inside, the chief's words echoing in my head. I sat down in my worn office chair, the one that's heard more of my secrets than any person alive. I didn't open a web browser. I opened a new, encrypted file on my desktop. I named it Hummingbird, and then I started to dig. The first rule of digging is to know what you're looking for. I wasn't looking for dirt on Karen, not yet. I was looking for the structure of her little empire. The Harmony with Nature initiative sounded impressive, noble even, but nobility takes work, paperwork, and paperwork leaves a digital trail. I started with the city's public records portal. It was a clunky, outdated system, but it was all there if you had the patience. And patience is 90% of my job. I found her nonprofit registration. It was filed 6 weeks ago. The mission statement was a masterpiece of vague corporate jargon: to foster ecological balance and community well-being through proactive educational outreach. It meant nothing. The interesting part was the research she cited, the study on hummingbird migration. It was a PDF linked on their bare bones website. I ran a simple plagiarism check. Bingo. The entire document was lifted, word for word, from a 2012 graduate thesis from a university in Oregon. She just changed the title and put her initiative's logo on it, Amateur Hour. I felt a small spark of victory. This was easy, too easy. I wrote a short, polite post in the neighborhood online forum. I laid it out clearly. The original thesis, the plagiarized copy, the dates. I didn't accuse, I just presented the facts. For about 12 hours, I was a local hero. Likes poured in. Neighbors sent private messages of support. Finally, someone stood up to her, one wrote. It felt good. I should have known it wouldn't last. The next morning, the internet fought back. A brand new local news website, one I'd never heard of, called the Oak Valley Sentinel, published its lead story. The headline was a gut punch. Disgraced ex-corporate spy targets local environmentalist. My photo was under the headline, not a recent one, but my old corporate headshot from 10 years ago. The article was a work of fiction. It twisted my firing into a story of corporate espionage. It painted me as a bitter, unstable man with a grudge against successful women. And it quoted Karen, who sounded like a saint. "I'm just trying to protect our beautiful town," she said. "I don't understand why I'm being attacked like this." But here's what really turned my stomach. The article contained details about my confidential severance agreement. Details that only 2 other people in the world knew. Someone didn't just write a smear piece. They had access. This wasn't a neighborhood spat anymore. This was a professional hit. The tide in the community forum turned instantly. The likes on my post vanished. The supportive comments were deleted. Now, people were asking if I had a vendetta. Was I stalking Karen? The digital mob is a fickle beast. Have you ever felt that? One minute you're a hero, the next you're the villain, and you haven't even changed your shirt. Then came the second wave. My professional profiles, the ones I used to get freelance work, were flooded with 1-star reviews. They all came in over the course of an hour. Anonymous profiles, all repeating the same phrases from the article: unprofessional, unstable, do not trust. The final blow came an hour later, an email from my biggest client, a tech company I'd been contracting with for 3 years. The subject line was urgent project pause. The email was short and cold. They had become aware of some concerning public information and were putting our contract on hold pending an internal review. That was a $15,000 contract. Gone. Just like that. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the monitor lighting up the dark room. The smell of stale coffee filled the air. She hadn't just removed a bird feeder, she had surgically dismantled my reputation and my income in less than 24 hours. This wasn't a one-woman show. She had resources. She had help. I looked at the old ID card still sitting on my desk. I remembered the day I was fired, the condescending look on my boss's face as he slid the severance papers across the table, the feeling of being completely, utterly powerless. I had sworn I would never feel that way again. That night, a small, elderly woman knocked on my door. It was Mrs. Gable from 3 houses down. She clutched a stack of papers in her thin, trembling hands. She was terrified, but she was also angry. "Mr. Henderson," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "She's doing it to me, too. Said my roses are an invasive species. Said I have to remove them." She handed me the papers. They were official-looking notices from the Harmony with Nature initiative. The same design, the same font, the same vague threats. I took them from her, and as I looked at the list of other names at the bottom who had received similar notices, a cold, hard thought began to form in my mind. This wasn't random. There was a pattern here. And if there's one thing I'm good at, it's finding the pattern in the noise. I took the papers from her hands. The crisp edge of the documents felt sharp, like a weapon. The papers in my hand were thin, but they felt as heavy as bricks. I thanked Mrs. Gable, assured her I'd look into it, and closed the door. The deadbolt sliding home sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet house. For a long moment, I just stood there in the hallway, the scent of her lavender perfume lingering in the air. Fear has a scent, you know. Sometimes it's lavender. I spread the notices out on my dining room table under the dim overhead light. There were 5 of them, including Mrs. Gable's. Mine made 6. Each one was a perfect copy, a template of intimidation. One for an oak tree that was potentially hazardous. Another for a vegetable garden that attracted rodents. All of it nonsense. All of it signed with Karen's flowing, arrogant signature. My hands moved automatically, my old training kicking in. You don't fight a dragon head-on. You map its territory. I sat down at my computer, the familiar hum, a comforting sound in the dead of night. I pulled up a high-resolution satellite map of our neighborhood. It's the kind of tool real estate agents use, showing property lines, owners, everything. One by one, I pinned the addresses from the notices. A red pin for my house. Click. A red pin for Mrs. Gable's roses. Click. Another for the oak tree. Another for the garden. As the last pin dropped onto the map, I leaned back, and a cold chill went down my spine. It wasn't a random shotgun blast of complaints. It wasn't a scatter. It was a line, a perfectly straight, surgically precise line of red dots. It cut through our neighborhood like a scar. Funny thing about straight lines in nature, they don't exist. Straight lines are man-made. They mean intention. They mean a plan. You ever get that feeling when a tiny nagging thought just won't let you go, telling you you're looking at the edge of something much bigger? My heart started beating a little faster. This wasn't about ecological harmony. This wasn't about power tripping on a neighborhood scale. This was something else entirely. I zoomed out on the map. The line of red dots ran perfectly parallel to the old woods at the edge of our subdivision, the undeveloped swath of land that everyone just took for granted. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I was no longer just a guy defending his bird feeder. I was an analyst with a data point, a very, very strange data point. I started pulling county zoning records, land use proposals, minutes from town hall meetings going back 5 years. Most of it was boring, bureaucratic sludge. Pothole repairs, budget approvals, debates about holiday decorations. I brewed a pot of coffee, the bitter aroma cutting through the tension in the room. I spent hours sifting through digital archives, looking for any mention of that strip of land, any proposal, any survey, any whisper of development. Nothing. It was a ghost. But that was the thing that bothered me the most. In the world of real estate and development, land is never just forgotten, especially a prime piece of undeveloped property bordering a quiet, established neighborhood. Silence isn't an absence of noise. It's a sound all its own. It means someone is being very, very quiet on purpose. I went back to the map. The 6 red pins glowed on the screen like angry sores. 6 households, all being methodically harassed into compliance. Into what? Why us? Why this specific line? The houses weren't the target. They were the buffer zone. The pieces were clicking into place, but the picture they were forming was dark and ugly. Karen's initiative wasn't the goal. It was the tool, the crowbar to pry open a door. She was clearing a path. But for who? And for what? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out into the pre-dawn gloom. The street was empty, the houses dark. But I knew that behind those walls, 5 other families were scared and confused. They thought they were fighting a lonely battle against a neighborhood bully. They had no idea. I looked back at the screen, at the clean, straight line that sliced our lives in 2. It wasn't a line of complaints. It was a border. And I had a terrible feeling I knew that something big was planned for the other side. The next move wasn't mine. It was hers. And it was a masterstroke of public theater. The town council announced an emergency community forum to discuss a new zoning proposal. It was framed as a chance for residents to voice their opinions on an exciting new opportunity for Oak Valley. The flyer showed smiling families and green trees. The proposal's name was Apex Eco Village. Apex, the word echoed in my mind. The pinnacle, the top. The arrogance was breathtaking. I knew I had to go. This was it. This was the moment the quiet part would be said out loud. The forum was held in the high school gymnasium, the air thick with the smell of floor wax and cheap popcorn. It was packed. I saw my neighbors, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. I saw Mrs. Gable, looking small and lost in the crowd. And then I saw Karen. She wasn't just there, she was at the front, sitting beside a man in a crisp $1,000 suit. He had the kind of empty, polished smile you see on billboards. He was introduced as the CEO of Apex Developments. Karen was introduced as his community liaison. My blood ran cold. It was all connected. The Harmony with Nature initiative wasn't just a front. It was the advance team, the infantry sent to soften up the target. The man in the suit spoke first. He painted a beautiful picture of a high-tech, environmentally friendly housing development. He used all the right words: sustainable, carbon neutral, community-focused. He showed glossy architectural renderings of sleek modern houses nestled among the trees in the woods behind my house. Then Karen took the stage. She was magnificent, in a terrifying way. She spoke not as a developer's partner, but as a concerned citizen who had fought tirelessly to bring this wonderful opportunity to our town. She claimed her initiative had worked with Apex to ensure the project met the highest ecological standards. She was selling the poison and the antidote in the same bottle. It was working. You could feel the mood in the room shift. People were nodding. The promise of new amenities, higher property values, and a greener town was a powerful lure. What would you do? When a lie is wrapped in such a beautiful package, it's hard to see the truth underneath. When the floor was open for questions, I stood up. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my voice came out steady. "My name is Mike Henderson," I said. "I have a question for the community liaison." Every head turned toward me. Karen's smile tightened just a fraction of a millimeter. "I was wondering," I continued, "if you could explain the methodology your initiative used to identify properties that were out of compliance with your ecological standards. Was it a random survey?" A murmur went through the crowd. The man in the suit shifted in his seat. Karen didn't miss a beat. "We rely on concerned citizens to report issues," she said smoothly. "We are a community-driven organization." "That's interesting," I said, my voice getting a little louder, "because the 6 properties you've targeted in the last 2 weeks, including my own, form a perfectly straight line, a line that just so happens to trace the exact border of the proposed Apex development. Can you explain that coincidence?" The gymnasium went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I had her. The logic was undeniable. The visual was clear. For a second I saw a flash of panic in her eyes. I had won. But I had underestimated her. She let the silence hang in the air for a beat. Then she looked at me, her face a mask of pity. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice filled with a fake syrupy sadness. "We've all seen your public attacks. We know about your history. I think it's sad that your personal vendettas are causing you to see conspiracies where there are none." She turned to the crowd. "This is exactly the kind of negativity that holds our town back." And just like that, the moment was gone. She had turned my logic into paranoia, my facts into a personal obsession. The crowd wasn't looking at her anymore. They were looking at me, and they weren't seeing a neighbor asking a tough question. They were seeing the crazy guy from the internet, the disgraced spy. I sat down, my face burning. I had walked right into her trap. I had brought a knife to a gunfight, thinking it was a debate. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived at my door. It was from a law firm I'd never heard of. It was a cease and desist order. They accused me of defamation, harassment, and tortious interference with a business contract. They threatened a lawsuit that would wipe me out. The paper felt cold and heavy in my hand, a formal declaration of war. I was cornered, and I was alone. The lawyer's letter wasn't a threat. It was a cage. Every word was designed to paralyze me. Defamation, harassment. The legal jargon was a wall I couldn't see a way to climb over. They didn't just want me to be quiet. They wanted me to feel the crushing weight of the system, to understand that any move I made would bring it down on my head. For the first time in this whole mess, I felt the sharp bite of real fear. I spent the next few days in a fog. The reviews on my professional profiles were still there, like digital graffiti. The email from my client remained unanswered. I'd call, and it would go straight to voicemail. I was radioactive. Karen hadn't just beaten me, she had erased me. I'd sit in my office staring at the screen, but the fight was gone. What was the point? I had facts, but she had a narrative. And in the court of public opinion, narrative always wins. I'd look at the map on my screen, the angry red dots mocking me. The straight line wasn't a clue anymore. It was the chalk outline of my own defeat. One evening, I was just sitting in the dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside my window. The house was too quiet. The silence was louder than the accusations. I thought about just selling the place, moving away, starting over where nobody knew my name, where I wasn't the disgraced spy. It was a tempting thought, a clean slate, an easy exit. My phone rang. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello? There was a pause, then a man's voice, low and nervous. Is this Mike Henderson? Who's asking? Another pause. My name doesn't matter. Listen, you were right about the line, but you're looking at the wrong map. I sat up straight. The fog in my head started to clear. What are you talking about? Apex Developments, the voice said, rushed. It's not a real company, it's a shell. It was registered 2 months ago. Look up their parent corporation. Look at who sits on the board. Then look at the county's 5-year infrastructure plan, the one they haven't released yet. How do you have that? I asked. I just do. They're not just building houses, man. They're playing a much bigger game. You're just a bug on their windshield. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. A bug on their windshield. The phrase sent a jolt of ice through my veins. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? It's a special kind of hell. This felt like the opposite. A lifeline from a ghost. My fingers trembled as I typed. This was my world. This was my weapon. I wasn't a lawyer or a politician. I was a man who could connect the dots. The anonymous caller had given me a new thread to pull. Apex Developments was indeed a shell company, registered to a P.O. box in another state. But its parent corporation was a massive private equity firm, a firm that specialized in one thing, acquiring land for major infrastructure projects, utilities, pipelines, data centers. Then I searched for the unreleased county infrastructure plan. It wasn't public, but sometimes drafts get leaked, uploaded to obscure servers by disgruntled employees. I knew where to look. It took me 3 hours, but I found it. A 300-page PDF buried on a forgotten county FTP server. I scrolled through pages of budget projections and traffic studies until I found the section on new development. And there it was, a proposed route for a new high-capacity fiber optic trunk line, a massive data artery that would serve the entire region. And the proposed route, it ran directly through the woods behind my house. It all clicked into place. The eco-village was a lie. It was a cover story to acquire the land cheap. They weren't building houses. They were going to sell the land to the county or the telecom giant behind the project for 10, maybe 20 times what they paid for it. Karen's job was to devalue the bordering properties, suppress opposition, and make it easy for Apex to buy up the land without a fight. The hummingbird feeder, the roses, the oak tree, it was all just a coordinated campaign to create leverage. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a white-hot rage that burned away the fear and the apathy. They weren't just trying to silence me. They were trying to pull off a multi-million-dollar heist, using my neighborhood as a pawn. But then the rage subsided, replaced by a cold reality. What could I do? I had a conspiracy theory backed by an anonymous phone call and a document I wasn't supposed to have. If I went public with this, their lawyers would tear me to shreds. They'd say I fabricated it, that I hacked the county servers. They would bury me. The victory was false. I had the truth, but it was a truth I couldn't use. I was holding a winning lottery ticket that was written in invisible ink. For a full day, I did nothing. The truth sat on my hard drive like a time bomb, but I had no way to light the fuse. Showing the infrastructure plan would get me charged with hacking. Citing an anonymous caller was the definition of hearsay. They had built a perfect trap. I knew everything, and I could prove nothing. I walked through my house like a ghost. I'd pick up a book, read a page, and have no idea what it said. I stared out the window at the woods, no longer seeing trees but a river of fiber optic cable, a current of money flowing right past my life while I was drowning. The weight of it was crushing. I was close to giving up, truly giving up. Then, on the second night, my doorbell rang. It was Chief Miller. He wasn't in uniform this time. He just wore jeans and a worn-out jacket. He looked even more tired than before. "Can I come in, Mike?" he asked. His voice was different, softer. I stepped aside and let him in. We stood in the living room, the silence stretching between us. "My daughter came to me," he said finally, not looking at me. "The girl who was with Karen. She's a good kid, an idealist. She really believed she was saving the planet. He paused. She told me what you said at the meeting, about the line, and she said she saw the panic in Karen's eyes too. He finally looked at me. She believes you, and because she believes you, I started asking my own questions, quietly, off the record. I held my breath. That news site that ran the story on you, he said, the domain was registered 2 days before the article went live. The hosting company is based overseas. It's a classic burn site, the parent company of Apex. They've been flagged by federal agencies for aggressive land acquisition tactics in 3 other states. It's their business model. He wasn't telling me anything I didn't already know, but hearing it from him, from the man who had served me the warning, changed everything. It wasn't just my theory anymore. It was real. But it's all circumstantial, I said, the bitterness rising in my throat. I can't prove the connection. No, Miller said, a flicker of something hard in his eyes. You can't, but you can change the game. He leaned forward. You're an OSINT guy, right? You look for data, but you're thinking like a tech guy. You need to think like a con man. They're running a con, so run one back. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. The words hung in the air, a key I didn't know I was looking for. He got up to leave. My daughter feels terrible, he said at the door. She feels used. I told her the best way to make it right is to do the right thing when it counts. He gave me a short, sharp nod, and then he was gone. I stood there for a long time, his words replaying in my head. Run a con back. I couldn't use the leaked document, but what if I didn't have to? The con wasn't the document itself. It was the information in the document, and information can be delivered in more ways than one. A new plan began to form, a wild, desperate, beautiful plan. It was risky, it was theatrical, and it relied on one simple human truth. People believe what they see with their own eyes more than what they read on a piece of paper. I spent the next 2 days glued to my computer, but I wasn't digging for more proof. I was building a stage. I was creating a performance. I used my skills not to uncover data, but to present it, to visualize it in a way that no one could ignore. I made a map, not a static image, but an interactive, animated timeline. It was simple, clean, and devastatingly effective. Each click would reveal another layer of the truth, another piece of the puzzle, all using publicly available information. The registration of Apex, the creation of Karen's initiative, the financial records of her donors, pulled from public tax filings, the addresses of the harassed homeowners. And for the final piece, I didn't need the leaked document, I just needed the map from it. I took the proposed fiber optic route and overlaid it on my own map. It wasn't evidence, it was an illustration, a what if. As I put the finishing touches on the presentation, I felt a kind of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the target, I was the hunter. And I was about to set the most elegant trap of my life. I sent one single anonymous email to the town council, the local newspaper, and every person who had received a notice from Karen. The email contained no text, just a date, a time, and a location, the next town council hearing, and a single tantalizing phrase, the real Apex plan, live. I hit send, the click of the mouse echoing in the silent room. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait and see if they would walk into it. The night of the town council hearing, the air in the gymnasium was electric. My anonymous email had worked like a charm. The room was even more packed than before. I saw news cameras from 2 local TV stations. I saw every member of the town council, their faces tight with anxiety. And I saw Karen and the CEO of Apex Developments sitting at the front table, trying to look calm. They looked like people waiting for a verdict. I sat in the back, just another face in the crowd. Mrs. Gable gave me a small, hopeful smile. I saw Chief Miller standing by the exit, arms crossed, his face unreadable. His daughter was in the front row, her phone in her hand, pointed at the stage. She wasn't live streaming this time. She was ready to record. The meeting started with boring procedural stuff. Then the council president, a nervous man named Davies, cleared his throat. We will now address the matter of the Apex Eco-Village proposal. He looked out at the crowd. The floor is now open for public comment. Silence. No one moved. They were all waiting. Finally, I stood up. I walked slowly to the podium, my laptop under my arm. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes on me. Karens were like lasers. "My name is Mike Henderson," I said into the microphone. My voice was calm, steady. "A few weeks ago, I was accused of seeing conspiracies. Tonight, I'd like to show you one." I didn't wait for permission. I plugged my laptop into the projector. The gymnasium's big screen, normally used for basketball scores, flickered to life. On it was a clean, simple map of our neighborhood. "This is Oak Valley," I said, "a place we all call home." I clicked the mouse. 6 red dots appeared. These are the homes that have been targeted by the Harmony with Nature initiative over the past month. You might think it's random. It's not. Click. A date appeared on the screen. Apex Developments registered. Click. Another date appeared. Harmony with Nature initiative founded. 2 weeks later. A coincidence? I asked the silent room. Click. A simple flowchart appeared. It showed a line from a private equity firm to Apex, another line from the firm's owner to a charitable foundation, and a final line from that foundation to Karen's initiative, all of it sourced from public verifiable tax records. "This isn't an environmental group," I said. "It's a marketing department." The room erupted in murmurs. Karen was pale. The CEO was staring straight ahead, his jaw clenched. "But why?" I continued, my voice rising. "Why this elaborate charade? Why harass these specific families?" I took a breath. This was the moment, the bluff. "Because they're not trying to build an eco-village," I said. I clicked one last time. A thick red line appeared on the map, snaking its way through the woods, perfectly aligned with the 6 red dots of the harassed homeowners. "They're clearing the way for this. The proposed route for the new regional fiber optic trunk line, a project worth tens of millions of dollars to whoever controls the land." I looked directly at the council president. A project, I might add, that is detailed in the county's unreleased 5-year infrastructure plan. Chaos. People were shouting. The council members were staring at each other in disbelief. The CEO of Apex grabbed his briefcase and stood up, trying to leave, but a wall of angry residents blocked his path. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at Karen. I leaned into the microphone. "This was never about the birds," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but carrying through the entire gym. "It was always about the money. You just weren't looking in the right place." That was the kill shot. Her face crumpled. The mask of righteous indignation shattered, revealing the cheap, greedy con artist underneath. In the end, there was no lawsuit. There was no trial. There didn't need to be. The Apex deal evaporated overnight. The county launched a full-scale investigation into the zoning process and the parent corporation. Karen became a pariah in the town she tried to rule. She sold her house 6 months later and was gone. My life went back to normal, but it was a new normal. The negative reviews on my profiles mysteriously disappeared. My old client called back, apologized, and offered me a new, bigger contract. I was a hero to some, but to others, I was still the guy who could tear your life apart with a keyboard. It's a strange kind of respect, the kind that keeps people at a distance. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in my office, I look at that old, expired ID card, the symbol of my past failure. I used to see it as a reminder of what I lost. Now, I see it differently. It's a reminder that the system isn't always right, that sometimes the only way to fight a con is to run a better one. A few days after the hearing, a small package appeared on my doorstep. Inside was a new hummingbird feeder, identical to the one that had been destroyed. There was no note, but I knew who it was from. I filled it with sugar water and hung it on a new hook. The next morning, I watched a tiny iridescent bird hover outside my window, its wings a blur of motion. It drank its fill, and then it flew away, free. I took a sip of my coffee, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. The price was high, but some things are worth fighting for. And if you've ever had to fight for your own little piece of peace, drop a comment below. It's good to know we're not alone.